Hello, everyone. Thanks for your interest in such an important topic. We've heard it all morning. Grid action plan, electrification will be the hot topics for the upcoming couple of years in Europe and hopefully in many member states. Right. I'm going to dive right in. Today I'm going to address the topic of electric trucks and power grid integration, which is really a key challenge when we want to achieve or succeed the energy transition in the heavy-duty transport sector. You'll all be much more familiar with these figures, but it's obvious that we're seeing a big growth of electric trucks in Europe and in the US. In China, it's already there. But we can clearly see a trend of these vehicles growing in all truck segments across the global markets. And that puts us in the position that we sort of cannot miss the benefits that these trucks will bring, but the more and more electric demand that we're seeing from these trucks will pose an enormous challenge to our power grids. The IEA analyzed that last year, the collective energy demand of all EVs globally was 130 terawatt hours, which compares to the entire country of Norway. So project this to 2040 and you'll have a serious challenge of integrating electric transport into our power grids. If we don't integrate them well, cost efficiently, beneficially, for the grid, for society, for consumers, we risk of slowing down the energy transition. And I think we cannot afford that. So let's talk about the solutions for the remaining time. We think that the sort of magic ingredient, the key solution to integrating electric trucks cost efficiently into the grid is smart charging. And by smart charging or optimized charging, we mean that electric vehicles, in our case trucks, charge when it is cheapest for them, when the cost of electricity are cheapest, and the benefits are highest. So we get to what we call a win-win-win for consumers, in our case the fleet owner, who will benefit from lower tariffs. We also see a win for the grid because we use existing capacity much better, and we create a win for the environment because ideally that's those times when energy is cheapest, typically the renewable energy is cheapest, and we use the grid, the available energy, the available capacity that we already have. So here's a win-win-win from smart charging. The big challenge for trucks though is, do we have the flexibility windows from trucks that are tied up in fleets in very tight business schedules? We certainly have them at the depot. We may have them at the freight center where they unload and offload. We don't really have them when they're charging very high capacity megawatt charging at highways. So depending on the use case, we are in the situation that we need to optimize what we can, and we need very, very good price signals and a functioning system in place to make that happen, to make charging as cost efficient as it can be to help electrification accelerate in the truck sector. Now, how does that look in reality? This is new unpublished data from a study we're just finalizing on France. What you can see here is a study of a selected grid a representative grid south of Paris in France, where we compared a charging scenario of a mixed fleet, passenger and electric cars, trucks, in 2040, based on real grid data and projected demand from the fleet. And what you can see is that with smart charging, which is in the high flexibility scenario, compared to the non-smart charging, the low flexibility scenario, we actually managed to optimize and to help lower the peaks in the system that you can see here. This is a 1 day, 24-hour load curve for that area. And that area is where a big highway is going through. That means lots of traffic. So we can really see here the profile of truck charging compared to other loads on the system. It's a very interesting grid perspective that is really hard to quantify. So this is first of its kind modeling on new numbers. So what we're seeing is two things. First, depot charging will be hugely important to help optimize sort of grid use in areas where that's possible. You can see that in the, does this actually work? You can see that in the light green shade on the high flexibility scenario. That's the depot charging portion of the fleet. And you can see when smart charging is happening, that portion is moved during the night away from the peak hours during the day. And we avoid a peak on the system during day. What you can also see is that dark blue peak over here isn't there in the smart charging scenario. How did we get rid of that? That's actually the megawatt charging portion. That's the trucks that charge very fast on the highway. And they only have 45 minutes regulated resting time, right? It's very, very difficult to optimize that portion. But we're still seeing that the peak is lower overall. Well, they actually got some help. They got some help from other fleets that are also present in that grid area, but that managed to optimize. There's a little bit of work charging that was moved. There's a little bit of residential EV charging, passenger EV charging that was moved, and the depot charging, which means that actually all EVs on the fleet present in a certain area need to do optimized charging as a collective task to help us avoid those costly peaks on the system that cause cost in the grid that in the end every electricity consumer will pay with their bills. So smart charging is a collective task. This study is going to be out in a month. Check our website for the updates. But I want to move on. What are the main ingredients to get optimized charging going? Two things that you've heard, I'm sure, elsewhere in this conference today: planning and pricing. The planning bit is essential. Let's make sure that we have the transparency on the grids so we know what's going on and we know where capacity is. We know when we need to build, especially for truck charging. Help depots electrify. Smart charging at depots using the hours that the trucks is standing, for example, overnight, will be absolutely key to reduce those peaks in the system that create costs. Of course, ask grid operators to project in detail what portion of truck charging they expect, for example, for their grid area. In the UK, they're already required to prepare the grid. The discussion of anticipatory investments is a tricky one. We do want to make sure that the grid is upgraded, is digitalized, is in place. We don't want to overbuild because that, again, that creates cost. Pricing is the other key ingredient. I'm going to hear a warning now that I need to conclude. Pricing is the key ingredient because we need to give fleets, for example, consumers, strong price signals that they need to shift their charging to better times, right? The cheaper it is for me as a fleet operator, for a depot owner to charge trucks overnight, the more I'm going to see a benefit, the more I'm going to do it. There's no mystery about it. The main price comes from power networks and how they're used. This is a study that's published. I'm not going to go into detail, but feel free to check it out. We studied border areas where, and we studied the cost of charging trucks at border areas in Europe. There is an example between Germany and Poland that's quite interesting. What we conclude is that we need cost-reflective pricing of networks. The more balanced the pricing, the more it actually conveys the state of the grid, the better we can balance out the charging, the smarter the charging, the less cost for everyone. Here's my gong. To conclude, what we need in terms of policies in place are smart charging everywhere where there's public charging and private charging happening, at highways, in depots. What we also need is to get the electricity market requirements in place so smart charging can actually happen. Fleets are seeing the price signals to know when is the best time to charge for them. And that will happen when the electricity market reforms will be implemented in member states. And last but really not least, get the local grids in shape. That's where the most important price signal comes from. So consumers know what's going on and can optimize accordingly. I'll conclude with my key messages real quick. Without smart EV charging, we cannot make the truck electrification cost efficient. This is really the key ingredient to accelerate electric road transport. We need to anticipate charging demand, but also increase grid transparency. Pricing of networks and electricity needs to be cost reflective. Poland just has introduced a dynamic energy price and has a time of use network pricing. So ingredients are there. Let's make them work together. And of course, energy and transport stakeholders need to collaborate to make it happen. Thank you so much for your attention. Check out what we do. All our work is free and public on our site. We are not for profit. And please come up to me after this with any questions or comments. Thank you so much.